Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Foss Ribbits. You probably know my name, but I don't know yours. That seems very rude. Well, I'd like you to cast your mind back, if you will. And now, if you've done that, if you could pick it up again, reinsert it into your cranium, and instead now remember to 2014's Edinburgh Festival Fringe, you may recall I spoke to somebody called Dave Spencer. He represented a theatrical group called Another Soup behind two immersive musicals which were on at the Fringe last year. They shared a heading, Victorian Vices, and one was an adaptation of the original Sweeney Todd book, Sweeney Todd and the String of Pearls, nothing at all to do with Stephen Sondheim's version, and the other was an interpretation of Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. I got to see Sweeney Todd and the String of Pearls, and it was a remarkable piece of theatre, a lush, interactive, immersive musical that really did transport you into the streets of mid-Victorian London. And in response to the traditional chant of who ate all the pies, well, it very much wasn't me in that environment of Sweeney Todd. But it is the second of those shows, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which has made it to London, to the King's Head Theatre. As I'm sure you know, The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of the great Victorian novels, sitting very firmly in the Gothic tradition. And of course is the story of the good-looking young man about town whose dark hidden secret is that he has a painting in his attic which ages instead of him. It is of course a variant on the Faust story, as so many stories are, but what's interesting about the book itself is that this year marks its 125th anniversary, and so what better way to celebrate that masterpiece of the Victorian literary world than a stage musical adaptation. And so Dave Spencer and his theatrical company Another Soup, which has now become a professional company, have reimagined their version of last year for London at the King's Head Theatre, Islington. As you may know, the original version of Oscar Wilde's story was a lot more overt and was only published in book form in a revised edition which sat more comfortably with Victorian morality, which immediately gives us two different versions of the same story. Add to that the subtext which was already there and which became even more obscured by the revised version, you have a myriad of opportunities to investigate the murky Victorian world through a new version of this wonderful story. It's advertised as Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray, an immersive new musical, and I sat down with Dave Spencer at the Royal National Theatre to talk about this new London version of this perennial favourite. And though it pains me to say so, we did in our discussion as we unravelled all the possibilities that this story gives any adapter, 50 Shades of Dorian Gray. Here's Dave Spencer. Musical Talk. Well, Dave, it's lovely to see you again.
Yes, lovely.
Our listeners won't be able to know this, but you've changed your hair since I saw you last, which has
I have indeed.
completely discombobulated me. But you are the same creative person I met in Edinburgh last summer.
Am.
And you have, I'm delighted to say, made it to London with one half of your Edinburgh offering, which is the Picture of Dorian Gray. So I suppose the very first thing we really ought to do is explain how you got to the King's Head in Islington.
Well, so we came off Edinburgh in August last year, and
we should say, I think, that you were nominated for awards, and it was very well received, and there were stars aplenty.
No, definitely, it was really well received. It was wonderful. We got Best Play Award from Dark Chat. We were longlisted in the Musical Theatre Network Edinburgh Awards, which was wonderful when you consider who we were up against, which was great. We went to see some of their shows, and it was just marvellous to be among that company.
It's not a small field in Edinburgh,
It's not at all, no. I think we were up against something like 80 or 90 other shows that were going against that, and then we were shortlisted, up. I think there were 10 of us in total, so that was very boosting. But and then we came back to London, kind of sorted ourselves back into everyday life. Thought about doing these recordings.
So you came down in all
we
possible
did,
senses,
definitely, exactly. Came down geographically and also emotionally, and we planned to record the soundtracks of both the shows. Hopefully immediately, which didn't actually happen. We have just recorded them about 2 weeks ago, in the midst of preparations for Dorian Gray at the King's Head Theatre.
So we should just, I think, elaborate here. You're using your original Edinburgh cast for the recordings,
Yeah.
but your new Dorian Gray is a brand new cast. So
Yes, it is.
It's even more of a task.
It is
sort of
indeed, yeah.
Fliply flown away, we did this. It's shockingly difficult, but it's even more difficult when you're letting on.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a busy, not just a creative man, but an organised man. At least I hope you are.
I would like to say that I am, yes. I mean, it's a little bit hamsterish at times, kind of spinning the wheel frenetically, but I think hamsters know what they're doing in the end, so I would hope that I know what's going to be happening at the end of the day, so we'll see.
But you don't soil your cage.
Well, exactly, yes. I think my cage is pretty spanking clean, so we'll go with that.
So you're recording in a way as a sort of punctuation on the end of the Edinburgh phase
Yes.
of the development of the two stories.
Yeah.
But it is one which has made it to London.
Yes.
What is the process by which you detach one of a double bill for a performance anywhere that isn't Edinburgh?
Yeah. Well, I think the way that we look at it, we took them to Edinburgh as Victorian Vices. So we took Sweeney Todd and Dorian Gray as two parts of the same story, as it were. So there were links, there were crossovers. However,
and tone
yes,
and music and
yeah,
direction,
and
in
also
fact,
yes, and
a repertory.
yeah, and it was a repertory
Yeah.
cast. We were performing them every day, so it was 3 hours of shows in total, one after the other, with half an hour break, I think it was, between. But originally, Sweeney Todd actually started in Durham, and that was completely separate from Dorian. Dorian came after we had another run, a kind of reprise run of Sweeney Todd in Durham's Indoor Market, and then just decided that wouldn't that be a great musical to write, because myself and Joe Turner, we loved working with each other so much that we just wanted to continue it. So I write the lyrics in the book, and then she composes it, and now we also have Isaac Lusher, who is an extremely talented violinist, who is the musical director of this current run of Dorian Gray, and he is the orchestrator of another Supes orchestrator now, actually, and is just superb at it and just knows exactly how to get such a wonderfully full sound. And we have two instruments in this piece, and you wouldn't think it's
Only
absolutely marvellous, yeah. Two instrumentalists, sorry.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But yeah, we have guitar, piano, cajon, and violin, and that's it.
So our question then is, you're saying that actually the picture of Dorian Gray was it was never deemed to be part of a double bill. It just
No.
fitted thematically when
Yeah.
you decided to do two shows, and they do, they
Yeah.
jigsawed beautifully. So actually detaching them, presumably, is not an intellectual leap.
No, it's not the kind of tough decision that I think it could appear to be if you came to it as Victorian Vices.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of our followers and people who come to a lot of our shows, they saw Sweeney Todd in Durham first, and therefore went to see it again in Edinburgh, and then saw this extra piece, Dorian Gray, on the side. And it was very much then a kind of nascent piece that was still growing at that point, whereas I think we've reached something that is a really great product now. So, yeah, so I don't think we find it that difficult to dissociate and detach them. I think we think of them as two discrete pieces
Just
that
happened to be on
can
at the same
work
time,
together, and did happen to be on at the same time, and did really meld well together and mesh.
yeah. Is it the one you thought would come to London?
I think because Dorian Gray was written after we'd premiered Sweeney Todd in Durham, and after we'd worked together for a long time, it was the kind of raw version of Sweeney Todd was a lot simpler and more basic than the raw version of Dorian Gray, because we had that working relationship then, and we knew what each other's styles were. So I think now Sweeney Todd has progressed slightly. We've been rewriting some bits as well. But I think Dorian Gray was just the kind of instantly more useful one to bring to London. I think it's a story that not as many people will be doing at the same time. Obviously, Sweeney Todd's on at the moment, Shaftesbury Avenue.
The Sondheim Sweeney.
The Sondheim Sweeney, exactly, which is, receiving rave reviews and is wonderful, and haven't yet had a chance to see it, but I've heard such great things about it. And I just think that there's a time and a place and also a space for the Sweeney Todd that is ours, and that is hopefully in a market tour sometime in the near future. But I think Dorian Gray really is obviously based in London as a story, and I think that we just wanted to kind of break into the London scene with that, and I think it was a really good offering in order to do that.
And I think we should elaborate, or clarify rather, that another soup, which is your group, was for a while a kind of sort of follow-up to Durham.
Yes.
But is now a professional company.
Yes.
Hiring professional company. So this is a brand new production, newly imagined, newly
Yeah.
staged, orchestrated presumably in a slightly different way, with professional cast, professional
Yeah.
director, professional musical director. That's a step up.
Yes,
I mean, your group
definitely.
was always very professional, but
yeah.
now it is professional by status.
Yes, definitely.
So,
yeah.
you know, what challenge does that bring you?
I think there's a lot more paperwork. I think there's a lot more legal aspects to it. It's better in most senses. Obviously, it's a big cost to pay a team of. I think we've got 4 actors. We've got a musician actor as well, and also the musical director Isaac. We're also paying Steffi Walker, who is our co-writer and co-director. I'm being paid as well. We're paying a few freelancers. Ruby Lawrence, who's choreographed on past shows, she's getting paid. So everyone working on the production is being paid for their time.
Which is a sign of a professional production,
Which is
of course, yes.
what I obviously prefer to do.
And
I don't
fair
want to
and
rip people
equitable
off.
as well. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we had our equity meeting the other day, and you know it's good to start forming those links. I think it really helps you arrive on the scene in a different way, rather than just saying we're here, we're doing a great show. It's also we're here and we're actually going to work properly at this.
But does that affect the narrative and the direction, and you know what the public will see?
I think obviously taking Victorian Vices to London, we could have done it with a cast of 12 again and 6 musicians and everything. But obviously that's completely unfeasible financially. So we did have to cut it down, and we approached Adam Spreadbury-Mayer at the King's Head Theatre in order to put on this piece. This was, I think, 4 or 5 weeks ago that we decided to do that. And we were discussing it with him, and he raised concerns, obviously, that we wouldn't be able to pay the cast for anywhere near the amount that they would have to be paid, or the rehearsal time, if it was a cast of 12. So he recommended that we cut it down to 4, which I thought at first completely untenable. And you know, after you've had a month in Edinburgh with 12 cast and then 6 musicians, you can't possibly think that you will be able to do
Well, you have a
such
model
a
in
show.
your head, 'cause you've
Exactly.
seen it, yes, quite.
Exactly, and I really had to dissociate myself from my old direction of this piece. But actually, I think it really surprisingly works very well, and also on a slightly thematic note as well, which is nice and is the English graduate in me. Dorian Gray is the only character that actually is played singly by a single actor, and he is only Dorian Gray, whereas all the others change. So I think it's really nice to actually see that Dorian Gray, despite being such a character and such a horrible person at times, is the only one who's actually true to himself.
There's an irony there, of course.
Yeah, I quite enjoy that, and whether it's me just foisting ideas onto, you know, a practicality
But
aspect, I think it's great.
There's also a practical thematic link as well, isn't there? Because, I mean, if anything, Dorian Gray is a character that has dichotomy.
Yeah.
And here you are, here's you, Dave Spencer, director of both the production last summer and the production this spring, having to approach it in totally different ways,
Yeah,
in a totally
definitely.
different status. So there is your own, if you like,
Yeah.
existential dichotomy.
It's been quite a challenge to really separate myself from what I decided. I can still hear when I'm directing them the old cast saying the words, and it's really hard to restrain myself from going, no, you should be saying it like this. But you know, I've got new actors and they're bringing such wonderful things to the roles that I don't want to do that. But
And of course, the book itself, the source material, is sufficiently full of subtext. My word, thank you, Victorian censorship, but it does make for the better, more picturesque read, I think.
Oh, definitely.
As a result of that, and more to be drawn from it. That allows you to reimagine it whilst being true absolutely to the source material, whilst
Yes.
being utterly different from your previous show. Is that, I mean, you've been very honest about, you know, you hear your voice of the past, and there are concerns, but surely it's also quite liberating to cut free and start again.
yeah, definitely. I mean, we with the Edinburgh cast, we definitely rejigged quite a lot more the roles and the storyline. We added in a few more characters, we changed things around, and with this one we've tried to cut back slightly to the original novel, which is nice because also it's the 125th anniversary of the original publication of the story this year in June, I think it is. So that's really nice to actually get back to the basic story and really cut it down to its bare bones and really bring out the real themes behind it and what the story actually means to us as a company and
All right, let's
as a
plunge-
generation, I guess.
Let us plunge into the dark waters of what does it mean. I mean, I've already mentioned dichotomy. It seems to me that... Oh, I've got so many questions, but let's start with the obvious ones. You know,
Yeah.
Dorian Gray is a character that has both the obvious dichotomy of being a young man with an
Yeah.
ageing portrait. It's clearly, you know, if this is Faustus all over
Yes.
again. It's always Faustus when you
Yeah.
look from Little Shop of Horrors all the way through
Yeah.
to Dorian Gray. So you've got that obvious dichotomy, but you've also got the overt heterosexuality with the mistresses, and the women in his life that he overthrows and corrupts. But also, there's the dark undercurrents, usually symbolically referred to by his interest in art, which is clearly homosexuality.
Yeah.
And then you've got the relationship of Basil as an acolyte, which is clearly, I think, at least can be given a queer reading. But that's just a start. And, then you've even got simple class things. That he's a man who lives in a middle or upper class environment, but he travels to the working class environment. There are significant working class episodes. There's the simple dichotomy that you'd expect of respectability against his advice. I'll stop now, but there's a few to be thinking of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So but that's how I see it, just off the top of my head. What have you, as a group of people who are there to investigate and create and build, but explore and forensically analyse? What have you come up with?
I think it's quite a question.
Show your work.
I think we've really tried to unearth those hidden messages and hidden themes behind it. I think we've definitely taken a more queer reading than has been done in the past, but then is usually done, I guess.
I have to say, Neil Bartlett did a very queer reading.
Yes,
down
no,
at the Lyric
definitely,
and
and then
years ago.
and then you've got Matthew
Benedict
Bourne's
Bates, I think,
ballet, and there's all of that. But I think
you can actually cut this cake any way you like, that, can't you? You can quite fairly non-gay and fairly very gay.
Yeah,
exactly. If that sentence could be possibly said to be a good English example.
Yes, I think. Yes. No, I think we've definitely uncovered a lot of that and kind of done away with the fascination with art that the chapter of the 18 years passing has, with him very interested in carpets, which, while I love Wilde, isn't the most interesting thing in the world.
Do you not love carpets?
I'm a great fan of carpets, just not really reading about them. I'd much rather see them and have them on my floor. But yeah, so we've definitely shown that aspect to it. Yeah, and we've gone for quite a different angle with Basil this time. He's not a kind of diminutive artist. He's quite forthright and quite strong, actually, which is a really nice portrayal. I think that's really come out of Blair Robson, the actor who's playing him. He really brings something incredibly interesting to his part.
And you think, well, why would he be meek? It's actually when you think he's already a success in his field.
Exactly.
He is someone that other people respect, and so he's not when I say this, he's not a timid librarian. I don't mean anything against librarians, but he's not a house mouse.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that people have looked at the text, I think, from the wrong end. They don't see what he is at the beginning, they see what he is in the text rather than how he starts, and therefore they say, well, he's in this kind of sort of tepid love affair, if you like, or powerful love affair, which is non-reciprocated, or is it the Dorian? Yeah, so I like what you're saying there.
Yeah, like, I think that the problem with Basil is that he's always situated in his relationships with Dorian and Henry, so he's always with these powerful men who sometimes overpower him, and I think that it's really interesting to actually see that he's a very successful person in his own right, and very forthright and very clear and honest at times, and is actually the most heartbreaking story in there.
Oh yeah.
Definitely in our version anyway. You really feel for him by the end of it.
Well, is he not the innocent?
Yeah, definitely, and I think that he's such a wonderful character, and I'm really glad that we're actually doing him justice this time, rather than having him as some pandering, very, very weak character, just not really thought about. I think we've really gone. Yeah, we've done him proud, I think.
I think we have to ask. There will be a very obvious reading, which is you have a character who's interested in creativity, who falls under the spell of, say, I don't know, a minor member of the aristocracy, with whom there is a subtext of a gay relationship. One could see, if one wanted, Oscar Wilde's own story in that. Once again, that would make it too obvious, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think.
So how you avoided the pitfalls of making this biographic?
I think that, number one, I don't think Blair Robson plays it very Wildean. I don't think he does the.
That must be a massive relief, though.
It definitely, and I think he's not effete. He's not kind of alive. He's quite a big creature in actual fact, and yeah, it's really wonderful to see this very powerful looking man being overpowered by this quite thin and shorter man than he is, but a young boy in fact, and it's really quite refreshing to see that power dynamic and relationship there. And then we have Henry on the other side, who is 6'5", and this towering, wonderfully well-spoken and deep-voiced man who also, by the end of the play, is under Dorian's spell. So, I think it's a nice break from the Wildian interpretation that Basil is wild. I think obviously you can read that into it, and that's fine, but
doesn't everyone?
Exactly.
Yes.
So let's just take it not at face value, but let's take it on its own terms rather than trying to foist these interpretations on it, I think.
Another question, forgive me, I appreciate we're getting a bit lit tripped here, but bearing in mind it's only a few years after Jekyll and Hyde, how much is the picture of Dorian Gray simply the story of Jekyll and Hyde without a transformation sequence? It's like Panto without the fairies.
Well, I think you're very astute in pointing that out. I think that it's...
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah. No, I mean that's obviously it's part of Gothic literature. I mean it's just a theme that ran through it all the time, and you've got that.
So I think that's the thing.
Exactly.
And I know that Wilde was very much influenced by Robert Louis Stevenson. I mean, I don't have an answer myself, but I would just like to make... It's always struck me as very interesting, actually, that Robert Louis Stevenson is a heterosexual writer who writes a Faustian tragedy in an almost entirely male environment.
Yeah.
The corruption, such as it is, there's hinted homosexuality with the murder and would have been pick up of Sir Danvers Carew on the River Thames. And the only two female characters, as I'm sure you know, is a flighty maid who looks out of the window and is immediately disbelieved because she's a flighty maid, and flighty maids are there to be disbelieved.
Wonderfully stocked characters there,
And then, of course, there's the Harroden housekeeper who protects loyally her master for 2 pages. And that's it, that's your female cast. It's like Reservoir Dogs. And then you contrast that with the homosexual, I used a modern term, but the gay Oscar Wilde, who his Faustian character is in fact actually overtly shown to be heterosexual and throwing over women. I mean, there's still the hidden gay subtext, but actually it seems to me they are writing the same story, but conversely or inversely on each other.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that is actually really interesting to point out, and I don't think that is something that we as a group have tried to throw into the mix. I think what we've done is just taken exactly, and I think we've taken the characters and really tried to just explore their arcs rather than branding it in such a way. We don't want to label these characters as anything, and I don't think that it's fair on the myriad interpretations you can have. I don't want people coming into the audience and saying, well, Basil wasn't gay, what are they talking about? I don't think that that's fair on the audience as well. I don't think they should come in and feel like their interpretation of Wilde has been violated or changed in some way.
So
but I want them to...
Alienation, in fact.
Exactly. I don't want to alienate them, despite the fact that we're kind of going for a Brechtian slight alienation there.
Brechtian dissonance, yes.
Exactly. But
that in itself, you've just explained to me something which is a very fine line.
Oh, God,
so
completely.
How have you trodden that line?
Well,
Don't say the word carefully, I need more.
Diligently.
Thank you.
The way that we... I think the way that we've kind of spaced that alienation is we want audiences to really get the characters and really feel for the characters, if they are supposed to feel for the characters. Obviously, anyone who leaves feeling for Dorian Gray by the end of it, we probably won't talk to them in the bar, but they might be a bit scary. But we'll go with that. But I think that we want audiences to come in and really immerse themselves in this. The way that I think we do Another Soup immersion, which we've kind of lovingly called Brechtian immersion, is that we want the audience to be part of that, to be part of their own enchanting of the spell. We want them to come in, see that they're in a theatre, to see that they're not in Victorian London, and for them to make themselves become immersed in it. Obviously we will help them, but then also by slightly snapping them out every so often, they have to work more.
Yes.
And therefore pay more attention, pay more, and be a bit more diligent in how they approach the theatre. I think that there's so much immersion and immersive theatre that goes on now that is just experiential, and I think that it's losing something. You're losing the quality of theatre with that. And so having an immersive musical that people kind of forget is a musical, but really enjoy it. And like we did in Edinburgh, where you have it in a conference room in a hotel where you can clearly see that there's a projector hole at the top, and you've got tiled ceiling and an air conditioner in the corner, but by halfway through no one cares, and I think that's great, and that is something that I definitely want to have, but also with the fact that halfway through no one cares about that, and then suddenly they're reminded about it and pointed it out to. So I think it's actually worked really well in our favour that we are doing this at the same time as Train Spotting, because there are elements of their set around, and we're doing a great crossover with them in between the two shows. That means that the audiences will come in to the 1980s and then leave having been through the 1880s, which is great. And what has changed since then, which is one of the questions we're asking.
We'll talk about recontextualization, if you like, in just a second. I'm actually very, very interested in this immersion. I mean, forgive me, another one of your big things is the immersive theatre.
Yes, definitely.
And it works so well with Sweeney Todd and the String of Pearls. And I can say that from my own experience. Literally within minutes, I was no longer in the conference room. I was in the street crowd, which worked along. Basically, it's in a high street in a way, isn't it? Because
definitely.
it's a series of rooms and shops, and you can imagine yourself there. And the audience are the actors are very clever in the way that they involve the audience in the atmosphere, without
distracting from the scenes.
Yes, exactly, and without distracting the audience so much that it's not a panto involvement.
Exactly.
It's a legitimate involvement. But you've just added an extra layer to that, which I'm so interested in, which is this Brechtian. What was the word?
Brechtian immersion.
Brechtian immersion. I like the idea that you are developing immersion in the emotional world of the story. But then, because you're snapping people in and out of it, you're forcing them to contextualise and recontextualise, and remembering that they are in a theatre. But then they have presumably, by force of enjoyment, then reconnect with the story at a slightly different point. Which, even if the story were done in a linear way before, would stop it being absolutely linear, because you're clicking in and out of it. Their engagement points are throughout, and at different points, presumably for different people. Because people's backs to Earth at different times as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, it worked so well with Sweeney Todd. I have no doubt it will work fantastically with
Fingers crossed.
and I shall find out.
Yes, definitely.
I suppose I want to know why you have... I mean, you elaborated a little bit earlier, but you said that some immersive theatre is purely experiential. So I suppose the obvious question is, what is wrong with that? I mean, I know the answer, but I'd like to hear yours.
I think that while it's great to go out for a night, I think the with some of the things that are going on and have gone on in the past few years, they do just become a night out, and I don't think that is...
They're almost spectacles.
Exactly, it's spectacular rather than, in the true sense of the word, rather than being theatrical. And I think that when you go to the theatre, you want to connect with the people around you as well. You want to be experiencing something that they're also experiencing. And the fact about the theatre, which we're quite heavily influenced by Peter Brook with this, in the sense that if you go to the cinema, everyone has the same view. There's it's the cameraman's view, whereas in the theatre you're sitting in a specific seat, you can see a specific thing, and that means that you are involved and perpetuating the action yourself with your attention. So we really want to give that aspect back to immersive theatre by having everyone realise that they're in a theatre and realise that they actually play a part in that, to pardon the pun, that they are relevant and necessary to that.
Which is what theatre is.
Exactly. So, and I think that,
perhaps,
definitely, and
was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, yes, we're not doing panto, but it does have that element of playful involvement, and rather than an anonymous involvement or just something that is branded as immersive, but actually you're just sitting there and not really doing anything, and you're just in, or a site-specific piece that is just in a different venue. I think that, we're really trying to get something, and we may not succeed, but I think that we did a really good job in Victorian Rises,
damn good try with that.
Exactly, and hopefully
you
we'll
did succeed anyway.
Yeah, well, thanks, but
well, that is for me to say.
I think that me to hope forever. But so hopefully we'll be doing that again in Dorian Gray, and it's obviously it throws up new challenges. We've only recently kind of coined the term Brechtian immersion, so we've only recently formalised.
I think many people were claiming it, were they?
No, I don't think. When I first said it to a few people, they were, why the hell are you trying to make that a thing? But I think it's grown on us so much.
Yeah, and we're not. If you
exactly.
Don't mind me saying, one of the joys of the last conversation we had in Edinburgh, and the show itself in Edinburgh that I saw, Sweeney Todd, was this. It was doing something new. There was no other show in Edinburgh like it, with the exception of Dorian Gray, which is one I didn't see.
Yes.
And you wouldn't want every show to be like it, but you certainly would want some shows to be like it. I must be honest, people will think, because once again, I believe you removed most of the seats from the auditorium in the King's Head.
Yeah, there was something like 20 seats, I think.
For people who need them, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
You sort of go in thinking, can I stand for 2 hours? And I don't mind telling you, I'll tell you now, which I didn't tell you in the summer, I had actually the most shockingly painful back.
Yeah.
But I did not begrudge the length of time. It was about 90 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something like that, yeah.
For Sweeney Todd at all, because I was in... Doctor Theatre works on the audience as well as the actors.
Oh God, definitely.
And so afterwards my back went pop. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But during the show, it said, "I'm not here. You just get on with it."
Excellent.
So I was able to engage. And I tell you what's very interesting. Of the shows I saw in Edinburgh this year, the ones which have left the most searing marks on my memory are a small number, of which Sweeney Todd is right up there.
Yeah.
Because the immersive nature of it actually is so all-encompassing, as you would expect. Those words do go together. That actually, that it's so much. When I'm going to say it's so much more than a theatrical experience, which is actually that is the very opposite of the truth.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? We're so used to theatre as a sitting-down experience, and being not unlike a cinema these days.
Yeah.
Particularly proceeding in Arch Theatre, but it is so nice that there might be somebody out there doing the immersive stuff. In a thought-through way, and a felt-through way as well.
Hopefully. Yeah, I just think that we've like, it's kind of the immersive theatre where it was shocking that you were in, I don't know, a brothel, or you were in a jail or a prison or something. That's had its heyday, and people know what to expect now. So progress has to happen, and hopefully we're some of the pioneers. To be vaguely narcissistic about it, but. I mean, one would, exactly. Like one would, we hope that we're doing something beneficial and worthwhile, and that people will actually enjoy and go away and say, actually, that was worth my time, rather than just, that was a good, 15 quid. That was fun. I could have gone to the cinema to see Hunger Games, but I didn't. So I enjoyed that instead. No, I hope we're not doing that. I hope it's something more.
No, very much more. Here's a question though: the great works of art and literature have in some way a timeless quality, or something perhaps that transcends the period from which they were created. Oscar Wilde's work has already proven itself to be worthwhile and still living, and you're not the last person to have made an adaptation of Dorian Gray,
not at all,
that field will continue for many a year, I'm sure. You're putting it on now, however, and now is, as you quite rightly pointed out, well over 100 years after it was written and set.
Yeah.
How does one find the resonances with now? What are those resonances with now? How important are those resonances with now? End of question.
Excellent, thank you. I will now attempt to answer all of that. I think that, to be honest, with the American Psycho musical that was just happening,
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith, didn't get to see it again, but I mean, that has such resonances with Oscar Wilde's tale. I think that debauchery and sartorial obsession with that character is wonderful. And
careful, man! I'm a child of the 80s in many ways.
Well,
culturally.
it was absolutely great that was happening, and I really want to see it for inspiration for this. I'm half glad that I didn't, because I think it would have coloured it too much. But
just knowing it was there.
Knowing it was there was, audiences like this, and they want to see something about this, and it's still relevant. And the fact that, that's in the 80s and in the 90s, or whenever it was, the fact that it's a pastime, and this is a pastime, but it's all still relevant. And it's one of the questions that we ask at the very beginning of Dorian Gray is, how do you think, as an audience, do you think you've progressed from what we're about to show you? And having some audience members just having seen Trainspotting, 30 years ago, yes. I think that it's a really interesting thing that they will come out of that going, actually, I think we're basically the same. Humanity is still on that same path, and we haven't yet progressed to a kind of Not that we might never do, but I think it's great to
a higher plane of civilization.
Exactly, I think it's great to find a commonality between us and our ancestors.
Yes, although I will say the debauchery was so much better dressed in the past.
Oh God, completely. You know, having corsets and frills, obviously better dressed. Yeah, latex wasn't invented, so you know you had to make do. So that's fine. But yeah, I think it's.
Well, you've got to keep your murderer's glove somewhere. And
Exactly.
That is ideal.
Definitely.
Practical,
And you know, if you've got a blade in the brim, then absolutely fine. But yeah, I think it's definitely very interesting that we can bring out those commonalities, definitely. And it's really nice to hear that London audiences like that sort of thing. You know, Jekyll and Hyde, American Psycho, all of that.
But as a director, what has surprised you about the resonances with the past and the present?
I think.
Because it must be you who as adapter and director, helps mine those for your audience.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Your actors.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly interesting that it is just a basic human tale. It's Faustian, like one of the oldest tales. It's just and so compelling, and it's just wonderful that it still makes a difference, and it still makes people grip the edge of their seats and think, "Oh God, why is he doing that? That's so stupid." And it's that horrible thing on. It's that same sort of nail-biting horror as you sit through some soap operas, and then you don't go there. No, that's really. Oh God, that's really stupid.
Well, any
and
thriller
it's,
works on the same
exactly.
basis.
It's wonderful to bring that in a slightly lower key, not startling way, but it's just great to bring that jeopardy in, and it's been really nice to play with that in rehearsals. Actually, that these characters will really make the audience feel, and they have such a basis behind them. How can they not? And they've been doing it for 125 years that they're still so important as characters, and they're archetypal now. They may not be fully common knowledge, but they're, to my mind, they're as archetypal as kind of Helen of Troy and I don't know. I go for slightly strange archetypes. I was going to say Nora Helmer there, but I think she's one of my archetypes. Hedda Gabler, that sort of thing, and Lady Macbeth. Those sorts of like common figures in everyday life that you can reference, and most people will completely understand where you're coming from. I think these characters are them.
So who is Dorian Gray most like in other culture? Jekyll and Hyde are no longer available to you?
I guess he's very similar to Icarus in that sense.
Oh.
But yeah, no, I'm going to go with Icarus. I see what you did there. You can stay. No, I think I'm going to go with Icarus as my pop quiz answer there.
It's very good off the top of your head.
I think that. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he flies too close and is brought down because of it and sinks because of it, and also brings down others as well. And I think that's a really powerful message: is that the actions you have will have an effect on everyone around you.
I believe John Donne has some words to say on this.
I think John Donne was a very intelligent person, and I can't quote him right now, but he'll be on shortly, so we'll see. It's a wonderful universal tale, and I can't come up with any other examples of the same character style or like the archetype, but that is so prevalent in every culture that you have this overreacher, and the fact that it's Faustian, the fact that the whole archetype is named after one of these characters is it's proof enough.
It's the cult of personality in some sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and which is exactly what all of these characters do. They have a cult of personality around them. They have a cult of aesthetics.
As if there was a resonance with modern world, with a cult of personality and celebrity. You have to extend that a little. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's it's just it's so relevant. It's so wonderfully pertinent to the way we idolise people and the way that celebrity is so important in modern day, and everyone would know everyone. You've got familiar faces everywhere, and the fact that Dorian Gray is still recognised 18 years later and is this immortal image of the man that he always was, in the same way that we can look back at Marilyn Monroe and know who she is. Yes, iconographic would be a more modern word.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Now, there's one big area where I think we are remiss, bearing in mind this is musical talk.
Yes,
we have
that is true.
Not spoken about the score.
No, that's true.
Now, from previous conversations that we've had in Edinburgh, We said very clearly and correctly that Sweeney Todd had a very sort of folky score, and that
Yeah.
worked absolutely perfectly for the Victorian street scene, particularly a slightly more working class one. You know, it's of the people, by the people, if you want. You know.
Definitely.
I know that's been used before, but
Yeah.
top marks. Oh well, thank you. God, I'm difficult this evening. I do apologise. You're being very, very kind. But that is a musical score. You also said that, you know, even last year you were fully aware that your adaptation of Dorian Gray was very much more, not traditional musical, but fell more into the tropes of musical.
Yeah.
And, you know, people will say, Jo Turner is your composer
Yes.
with you as a lyricist. You know, she did, and you did great work on folk music last time. What is the musical score? What is the musical tone? How have you decided that music enhances the Dorian Gray story?
Well, I think, I mean, not being a musician myself, I think I can say it is a lot more musical. It's more, I will now start singing because I have to, rather than before when the songs kind of were part of the fabric of the community's life.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of putting it as well. That's absolutely perfect and accurate.
Yeah, I think that's
how it came across.
Yeah, that's what we really wanted to go for with Sweeney, and there were only a few songs that were, I'm now going to sing my heart out.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that the way that we've presented Dorian Gray is that the songs are very much an overflowing of emotion in that traditional musical sense, but also in the sense that the chorus quite often takes on the role of Dorian's conscience or guilt or psychosis, whichever way you want to read it. And also the audience do too, which is a nice kind of meshing of the two types of people in the auditorium. And yeah, it's a lot more piano and choral based. There are a lot more extended harmony sequences in this.
When I say lyrical, I don't mean that in the sense of lyrics. I actually mean in the sense of the melodic and style
definitely.
of music.
It is a lot more lyrical, and it's a lot. It's almost softer, I would say. It's not as kind of jarring or as. It's not as bawdy, really. I mean, there are bawdy numbers in it. Yes, I think brash is a wonderful way of putting it, and yes, and I think that Dorian Gray is a lot calmer but deeper reaching, if you understand my meaning.
I do, yeah.
So yeah, like we're really proud with what we've done, and I think the lyrics themselves are a lot cleverer, and they're far more referential, and you know it's like loads of different things. Referential.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I went a bit overboard on some of the Shakespeare references at some points. But you know, I was, well, if I'm going to take on Wilde, I have to attempt to be vaguely clever. So let's try this. Whereas, it was, Sweeney Todd was a lot more salt of the earth and down to the ground sort of.
And yet you
simple.
are, you hide your light under a bushel. You're a man of great erudition, and you've impressed me thoroughly in every passage you've had. But you did say previously that you don't have Wilde's particularly epigrammatical way of speaking. So how easy is it for you to find a voice for you to use, which you can use for Dorian Gray, who's the product of somebody else, even in your own adaptation, via William Shakespeare, if he's available?
I think, yes. I think that there are segments, I'm not going to lie, that we have just lifted from the book, or at least speeches. A lot of Henry's lines are edited speeches, because I didn't want to challenge Wilde, and I didn't want Wilde. No, exactly. I didn't want Wilde fans or scholars or anyone or fanatics coming to the show and thinking, "Where's that great Henry line? Why wasn't that in there?"
Yes, it's an adaptation. It's not
exactly.
It's not a
exactly.
reword,
I'm not doing a new version of it. We're doing an adaptation that happens to be a musical.
Exclamation mark.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh God, no.
That would get exactly the wrong audience in at the moment.
Definitely. Completely. And we do reference that, but it's we'll leave you to find out what that is when you come and see the show. But I think that we definitely tried to make it. We tried to make it so that it was an homage to Wilde's flair and his charisma in writing, and his charismatic prose, but we haven't attempted to sully it or even overreach it or anything. We're not being Dorian Gray in our writing of the piece, I think.
Or Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde, yes. We're not attempting to kind of fly too close to the sun in that regard.
No Icarus fun thing.
Exactly, there's no Icarus writing.
But presumably you are able tonally and thematically to connect, so it doesn't jar, I suppose.
No, it doesn't.
You do see shows. I mean, how shall I put this? There's Jukebox musicals are not a good example of this because they normally all work at a fairly base level for a pop score. But I've seen many a score of a show which has been a fairly well-written show or with an excellent narrative, which is full of subtlety, and then for whatever reason the composer is a rock composer, and there's nothing wrong with rock music at all, and it can fit in the right context. Funnily enough, I've seen it done really brilliantly with the Armada of the Elizabethan period.
Oh, really?
Well, there's something brash about that.
Yeah,
period.
and something bombastic.
Yeah, there is, exactly.
Explosive, yeah.
Whereas I saw, I must say, a very disappointing musical version of the life of Kenneth Grahame and his son, which has been doing tremendously well around the country. So, maybe it's me, but the rock nature of the score just does not fit in with the filigree Edwardian comedy of manners. Well, not necessarily comedy of manners, but the story of manners, which is being played underneath it. It jars. That's the kind of thing I'm hoping you are not doing.
Oh God, no.
Not that rock is wrong.
I don't think I'd ever forgive myself if I did that. I think it has to be. They have to mesh quite well, and I don't think that rock and Dorian Gray, especially not a Victorian Dorian Gray, which is a fun way to say that, isn't it? We haven't actually used that one. It's quite surprising that we never rhyme Victorian and Dorian.
Quick, rewrite.
Yeah. God, get back to the drawing board. But yeah, I don't think that I would never have forgiven myself if we'd have written that. And Jo, our musical composer, is not the biggest fan of that sort of music, so I don't think she's ever going to write a rock musical, thankfully, because I have no idea how I'd do it or what we do it with.
But I'm interested in the versatility that you've already mentioned that she has, because folk is one kind of music, and this slightly more lyrical,
oh God, completely.
Flying music is different again.
Yeah, definitely, and she's just so wonderfully talented. I can just give her a song without even giving her context, and she'll somehow write this perfect melody that just completely fits, and then I'll explain why it fits, and she'll be like, oh, that's actually quite good. And I'm like, yes, well done. And this is all over Skype. It's just great.
But that's a creative symbiosis between the two of you.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't happen with every
exactly. I think
composer.
And she has said that it's the way that I write and the lyrics that I write really do give her the feeling of the piece, which is, it's wonderful to hear, because I don't intentionally do that. I don't intentionally try and inform her of the kind of mood of the piece that she's going to be writing, so it's nice that it kind of just happens.
So you write your lyrics first?
I think no, I basically I've always been a writer, and I've always kind of written chronologically through something. So I tend to, what tends to happen with lyrics is that I ordinarily out for a walk or sitting on the porch or something, and then suddenly I have this great idea. Yeah, I'm doing something or serving a coffee or something, and then I have this great idea and immediately have to jot it down, whether in my phone, on a napkin or something, and then given about half an hour, if I have the time, I will have a whole song written. And then
so you can
either
work it out
that's
quite quickly.
Yeah,
because the idea is it lands in your mind fairly fully formed by the sound of it.
Not really, no.
Oh,
it kind of it's almost like the impression of it lands in my mind fully formed, which is a stupid thing to say, but
no, it's not. It's evocative, but
and so I'll get, I don't know, a rhyme or a meter
Victorian
or
Dorian
something.
Gray.
Yeah, exactly. Although I didn't get that one, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I'll get a rhyme or a meter or a beat in my head. I probably won't have any music in my head at all. There's only a few times where I've actually had a melody that I've translated to Jo, and she's usually gone, that's nice, but we're going to do it this way, and then that way's been
so
perfect.
you're a rhythmic poet.
Yes,
like a
definitely.
Rhythmic lyricist.
Yeah, and so I'll get this idea, I'll write that down, and
Which
then
presumably makes scansion and that kind of thing work very nicely for you. That's
yeah,
your
and
strength
like,
if you've got rhythm.
Yeah, she.
Who could ask for anything more?
Like when Jo writes, she occasionally has to change things. All the songs that I write for her completely work meter-wise, but she's not the best with meter, and therefore comes away with it and rewrites it. And ordinarily, she doesn't have me on tap to go, how do you read this? Can you scan that for me? And so she just writes what she wants and changes a few words around, and then comes back to me saying, I've changed this, is that okay? And then obviously it sounds beautiful, so I'm fine with it.
Voice than I was expecting from
yeah, she's actually very she's been having a lot of cigarettes recently, and therefore she's very, very deeply
Gruff,
voiced.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, waking up very late nights, lots of coffee. But yeah, so she tends to not actually get the meter that I'm writing, which is great because it means that it's something completely different from what I've written, and
what you get
means that she has to work for it.
Fusion,
yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's not a simple setting of lyrics.
No,
it's
not at all.
Yeah.
and it's
Does she
very
ever present
organic.
you with a melody and ask you to write a lyric for it? Though?
She finds that very difficult.
Do you? Would you?
In the set, like, I think the only reason that we've done that is if I'm rewriting a song or adding a new verse. Like, there's one song in this version of Dorian Gray that has been opened out to the chorus to be a chorus number as well. So I wrote, this is actually a good example, because I wrote lyrics that really fit with the meter of the song that I already had, and when she tried to play it, she just couldn't get it, and I could kind of sing it to her, but she still didn't understand how it was going to work, so she had to add in some words, we had to change it, we had to add in a new musical phrase, which, you know, does actually get you a better product, and now it sounds absolutely superb, and now that Isaac's orchestrated it all around it.
But that, if you like, is almost a musical creative version of the old joke about the broom, which is this is the best broom I've ever had. It's only two new handles and three
exactly,
new
handles.
Yeah, it's the original broom. Then,
it's technically the same song, but it's definitely
so isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's just an added motif on the front of it. But yeah, I think our working relationship is so marvelous. It's so easy as well, and we've written a new song, which is possibly my favourite song that we've written together now, to show the 18 years time having passed in Dorian Gray. And we wrote it, she came down in order to organise the recordings and the scheduling for the recordings that happened 2 weeks ago, and instead of that we wrote a new song, and it was great. It just kind of happened. And Steffi Walker, who's our co-writer as well and also co-director, she had some ideas and threw them into the pot and had kind of a song. And Steffi doesn't, despite being a wonderful Shakespearean actress, and she really gets Shakespeare, her writing of metre isn't fully formed in the sense that I write rhythmically, as we've already discussed. So she has wonderful ideas and has there's this song in Dorian Gray called Bohemian and Gay, which is what it sounds like. Yes. And she has some, and we both wrote that together, walking home from each other's houses, texting each other lyrics. And she has, I know, the modern age, and she has some wonderful rhymes in there that are just marvellous, and I could never have come up with. But I have to kind of take her lyrics and then go, okay, I'll take these, I'll write them into a rhythm that will be fine. And then Joe goes, I can't write that into music, I'm going to change it a little bit.
So once again, another fusion.
Yeah, so it's, and I think this is something that's so important with Another Soup, is it's not just the immersion, it's the complete collaboration. We have so many multi-talented people. Steffi's an actress, she's also a co-writer and a brilliant character director. Jo is just such a wonderful composer, but also a superb musical director, where she can just bring out the best in people and really work. And despite the fact that she writes songs that literally have no breathing room whatsoever, she somehow makes people who aren't professionally trained or anything, she somehow makes them able to sing them. Isaac's a brilliant violinist and suddenly a wonderful orchestrator, and is now directing the music for the show. So we just have so many wonderfully talented people, and who are all kind of just excellent. And then Mrs. Lovett, who from the Sweeney Todd in Edinburgh, she's our dramaturg and takes my plays and goes, this character has died, you can't have them on stage yet, or now, ever. And she just sorts out all the things, and then is also an excellent producer. Like, it's just a wonderful kind of group of like-minded and also complementary people who bicker and argue, but then somehow get this great product at the end of the day, which is lovely. So the soup, in fact, is a minestrone, because everyone's put everything in it. But it actually comes out much better. It actually tastes really quite good. And I think that was something that the reason that we originally came up with the name of Another Soup. There are various reasons, but it was something to do with this kind of melting pot of ideas and of people and talent. And I'm not sure why it's another, but other people do work together. Yeah. So this is yet another one of those, and it's nice to be, it's pretty good tasting soup, I'm not gonna lie.
Taking us back to your Brechtian immersion, then, songs are by their very nature, well, usually in a musical, in the widest possible sense, Brechtian, because they are alienating and dissonant and not like real life. He said, underlining it and putting speech marks around it, if you get the idea, which I know you do. And you've been talking about the different kinds of immersion and the different kinds of break and the recontextualization and coming in and out of the narrative. How does music fit into that mix? I mean, it seems to me it seems almost perfect for what you're trying to do. But how far do you make it work in the way you want it to do, and how much does it organically find its own way?
I think it's quite a lot of it is organically finding its own way. But I think personally, to be honest, the music is some of the, not the least immersive, but the least kind of breaking out of that. It almost...
Oh, right. It keeps you in it.
Yeah, I think so. From what I can kind of tell of watching it, and obviously being the director and having seen it so many times and, you know, worked with it from scratch, I think that the music is actually a point where you do forget that you're supposed to be in the theatre and you're doing that. I think that it is very absorbing, and I don't think that that is necessarily, or at least the majority of the music isn't going to snap you out of it. There are some bits which are very much kind of, there are little trigger words or something that makes you think, oh, okay. But yeah, I think actually the music is one of the most immersive bits in it, rather than alienating.
Rather than decontextualizing.
Yes, I think let's go with that. Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I'm also pleased with that as well.
Yeah, well done.
We'll do that. We'll copyright that one.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we've spoken about quite deeply, I think, about the creation. We've spoken quite deeply about the writing, the tonal stuff. There's practical stuff, isn't there? Which I'm sure people are chomping at the bit at.
Yeah.
Which is, well, where is it? How can I see it? And what are you hoping to achieve from this version of Dorian Gray?
Right.
Both for the show itself and in Another Soup's long history, I hope.
Yeah. I mean, we've already done, I think we're on something like 8 shows or something, so now 8 productions, which is, quite good for a company that started in 2010 with very little money and from students, so that's quite nice.
Yes, it's an oddly long bill of fare.
Yeah, exactly. I think 5 years is a pretty hefty time.
Another 5 years? No, that's a different show again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we'll do that. That'll be.
Everyone's
it won't be. Let's just not do the last 5 years. Let's do something else. Another 5 years of soup. Let's do that. But yeah, we'll see. But no, I think that we've really kind of wanted with this anyway to set ourselves up in London, I think, and really get some sort of following and some sort of representation among the industry, and some sort of following and some sort of recognition from that. And I think Edinburgh's all well and good, and we've got so many loyal fans from there, and it's such a wonderful platform. And so fun for a month of your life just to leave everything and then go and spend a month being a Victorian is hilarious fun. But I think it's really nice that we can be in London, have this small collective cast that we can rock up this musical in 3 weeks. And
which is actually a sign of professionalism.
Professionals
definitely. Start with 3 weeks' notice.
Yeah,
they go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
you made the transition very soundly.
I hope so anyway. And whilst also holding down full-time jobs is a very It's been fun, but it's been very well. It will be rewarding when we open. At the moment, I'm just really pleased that we've managed to get this far. But yeah, I think we just wanted to make our mark sounds too strong, but just kind of
show people
have a
you're
presence
there.
And show people we're here. Yeah, we've arrived in a quiet kind of side doorway rather than going, boom, we're doing this. But all the best things happen in a slow trickle effect. So yeah, we'll keep going.
And the legacy of Dorian Gray as a show? I mean, obviously there's going to be a physical legacy in the sense of there will be a recording for people to...
definitely.
How might people come across that? If there are some sad people who have failed to live in London, who might want to hear the music, for example, how could they?
So we have, in the past 2 weeks, we've recorded the original Victorian Vices, the original Edinburgh cast recording.
Of both shows?
So of both shows, of Sweeney Todd and Dorian Gray. So basically when our current version of Dorian Gray in the King's Head Theatre goes up and is plodding along nicely, I will get down to organising CDs and digital copies and digital downloads of those 2 soundtracks, which will be available. All information will be on our website, which would be www.anothersoup.co.uk. And we'll have that coming out very soon. They'll be nice and affordable, which will be nice. I think we're going for rather than full soundtracks, we're currently going for a selection of songs, so it'll be something like 12 songs, so a proper album length, but of both shows.
Yeah.
And
the best advice.
Exactly. Yes, I think that. I'm not sure how else to put that, but the best of the Vice, and the best Vices. I think is we'll have that.
You'll find a way.
Yeah, exactly. And so yes, and they're sounding really good. We've got a few of the mixes already, and they're just being produced and finalised, but they're sounding wonderful, and it's really great to have that as a going into this new production as well. It's all happened very quickly, and it's wonderfully exciting to have two things going on at the same time.
So where is it, and until when?
So Dorian Gray is on in the King's Head Theatre in Islington. It starts this Sunday, the 22nd of March, and on Sundays we have a matinee at 3 p.m. It plays every day, Tuesday through to Saturday, and then Sunday matinees. Tuesday and Wednesday is on at 8:15 p.m. and then Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays is on at 9:45 p.m. and you can find all information on either our website or the King's Head Theatre website.
And I think, so people don't think, well, hang on a minute, if it's going to start as late as that, won't I get home after the tube's finished? Actually, the show is not 2.5 hours, is it?
The show is only 80 minutes long with no interval.
Which is it only?
So
it's a finely compact 80 minutes for the joy and fun.
Only, it's honed, yes. I think is the correct word.
There's no place like home.
Exactly. That's that.
Rubbish.
Yeah. Reaching too far then.
Yes,
Stop Icarus. But and it's 80 minutes that will pass very quickly in a good way, I think. Yeah. And so get down to the King's Head Theatre and see a bit of Victorian Vice, a bit of 1880s London for you.
Dave, every time I speak to you, you impress and amaze me. You have done nothing less today. So I expect to be impressed and amazed by the show, but I know I will.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so no, I hope you do fantastically.
Thank you.
I hope the show does fantastically, and I hope to hear a lot more from Another Soup.
Good.
And so merely all I can say is thank you very much for talking.
Thank you very much for having me.
Musical talk. Well, there we are. That's Dave Spencer, the director of Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray, an immersive new musical. At the time of broadcast of this episode, the show has just opened. It opened on the 22nd of March, and it runs through to the 12th of April. And those times of performance again, 8:15 on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 9:45 on Thursdays to Saturdays, with a matinee at 3 o'clock on Sundays. Go to www.kingsheadtheatre.com for more details and, of course, to book tickets. If you do get the chance, go along to see it. It might just be the beginning of a new genre of musical theatre. And even if it isn't, it'll certainly be a thought-provoking evening, enjoying, in a much more intimate way than is usually possible in a theatre, this, and I use the words from the advertisement here, seminal and salacious tale, presented in their renowned Brechtian immersion. It really is a celebration of the best of Oscar Wilde, in an exciting new form. Well, that's it from me this week. And it would indeed be that's it from everyone else too, except there's no one else here with me. So you'll just have to make do with this solitary goodbye from me. But before we go, Dave has very kindly offered us a chance to hear an exclusive version of one of the recordings from Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray. And so to finish the programme, let's listen to that. Goodbye.
Work of stark morality or even immortality soon sinks into banality when looked into at all. And those who find the ugly in things of simple beauty are corrupt, not charming, and this is merely false.
Beauty only serves to make the very brightest minds stumble to their deaths in chasms deep below.
A boy in England's capital, his mother quite a radical. She ran away with one who was a different kind of man. A baby she did start to bear, the shame of which she had to wear. Her father he did not approve and had the man swiftly removed. When in childbirth she did die, her cherub son at night he cried that face could launch 1,000 ships from his home untimely rifts.
In his heart a darkness fell, a darkness that would lead to hell, a hell to which his soul he'd sell, and sell it well he would.
The only souls who make the very brightest minds stumble to their deaths in chasms deep below.
Art and beauty hand in hand, a purpose that the great ones planned, a purpose humble, flawless, pure, leaves you always wanting more.
But art is useless just the same, a meaning that cannot be named, enshrined within its hallowed form, awakens those who spurn the norm. Wary should those poor souls be, the surface is not all they see, they laugh at those who cannot be content with prettiness and shine. Beware of them that seek below the paint and patina, the glow that clings to art and all things bright. This peril will become their plight.
This boy did try to find in art a meaning he could take to heart, a symbol, lesson, magic spell for life immortal, begged from hell.
Strength to keep his wondrous face, the only man in all the race to save beauty from such waste. From life's cruelty he'd escape, pleaded that one fateful day he could remain just Dorian Gray.
This episode of Musical Talk presented and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015, except for the song where the copyright persists with the original creators. And don't forget to follow Musical Talk on our various social networks, Facebook and Twitter. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Musical Talk Thos.
Now, that alcohol will make everything right.